Hi! Those of you who follow my blog may have read my recent posts about the dangers of processed meats, especially the industrially manufactured, mass-produced processed meats. I promised in my last post that I would show you healthy alternatives, and this is what I'm going to do today. I'll show you lemony, herby chicken breasts, which when they're cold and thinly sliced taste a lot like deli meat, but they can also be eaten, for instance, cubed over a salad or sprinkled over a soup, and they're absolutely delicious. The recipe is actually based on a recipe in my book, Zest for Life, the Mediterranean Anti-Cancer Diet. It's on page 180, garlic, lemon and herb chicken kebabs. Obviously we're adapting it slightly here because we're not going to be making kebabs out of it, so you use whole chicken breasts, but marinate them in the same marinade as the one in the recipe. Here are the ingredients. You'll need 2 or 3 cloves of crushed garlic, 4 tablespoons of olive oil, which is about a quarter cup, a teaspoon each of turmeric and paprika powder, about the juice of half a lemon and the zest of a quarter to a half of lemon, depending if you like your chicken very lemony, a good handful of flat leaf parsley that's been coarsely chopped, a smidgen of dried herbs, this is an herbe de Provence mix, and a few grinds of black pepper. Black pepper is thought to increase the absorption of turmeric, so it's useful to use the two together in recipes. And finally, chicken breasts, about a pound of chicken breasts, about 500 grams. If you have one of these blenders, it's ideal. You can mix this just in a salad bowl, but then you'll have to chop the parsley finely by hand, which is no problem. So into the blender, we crush our garlic. Hang on, I need enough. There we are. Now, also lemon zest, which I grate very finely on one of these microplane graters, which takes off just the zest but doesn't give you the bitter pith underneath. Then the half a lemon's worth of lemon juice. There we go. Olive oil. Parsley. The herbe de Provence. And a teaspoon of paprika powder, which will give the meat a lovely orange colour and a lovely smoky flavour. And finally, the turmeric, which, as you probably know, has very powerful anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer qualities. Finally, a few grinds of black pepper. Mix it all up a bit, and then we pop the motor on and just whiz it until it's become a nicely homogenized mixture. Once it's all nicely mixed, pour it over the meat, using a spatula to get out every last bit of goodness, and then coat the meat with it so that it's truly covered. This will do various things. First of all, it will infuse the meat with all those delicious herby, lemony flavours. And secondly, it will protect the meat from the heat of cooking, because as you probably know, cooking heat at moderate to elevated temperatures can cause chemical changes that produce carcinogens. And so by marinating meat, scientists have found that these carcinogens are vastly reduced. And this is probably why a lot of ancestral meat preparation methods, for instance in the Mediterranean region, have involved marinating meat in herbs and oil and lemon juice. Some sort of acid is very protective, and I think lemon tastes a lot nicer than vinegar, which is often used in marinades. So once it's all nicely covered, cover the dish with cling film or with a lid if you have one, and put it in the fridge, ideally overnight, or at the very least 2 or 3 hours. Don't salt it at this point because that will draw moisture out of the meat. Just salt it at the end when you're about to eat it. Next day, when you're ready to cook this, remove the chicken breast. Now, you can either cook it in the oven or on the stovetop using a griddle pan like this. This is a cast iron pan that leaves those very attractive ridge marks on the chicken. or in a normal frying pan. The thing you do need to watch out for is that you don't, if you cook it in a pan, that you cook it on really low heat, otherwise the herbs will start burning. Today we're going to actually cook it in the oven, just roast it gently. And so I've preheated the oven to 320 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 Celsius. We're going to put them in a dish. Doesn't need to be oiled because there's already quite a bit of oil in the marinade. And bake them in the oven at this gentle temperature. Oh, there's a little one. There. Slide it in for about 20 minutes. 20-25 minutes. Basically test, you can poke it with a knife, and if it seems to be if it's still slightly soft, that's what you want. You don't want it undercooked, but you also don't want it overcooked because it'll get really dry. So 25 minutes have gone by, and have a look if the chicken breasts are done. Basically, yes, you see they're bouncing back ever so slightly, but they're not wobbly anymore, so that's a good sign. Now put them on a cold plate to cool, and then you can refrigerate them. Of course, if you want, you can eat them like this, hot, with a vegetable or a salad, or you can cut them into thin slices and serve them on top of a salad, like a Caesar salad or something like that. And as for cold cuts, we'll wait for these to cool down and I'll show you what they look like. Once the chicken's completely chilled, you can slice it just like this. Basically, put it on a chopping board with a sharp knife. Slice it as finely as you can. Obviously, it's not going to be extremely wafer-thin deli meat, but it works very nicely as a sandwich filling, or for instance in a wrap. There you see, roughly like that. So the aromas of the marinade have really penetrated the meat, and it's very juicy and very aromatic, and basically ready to use. Now, I've made 3 chicken breasts. Nothing will stop you from making 10 or 20 and freezing them so that you'll have a steady supply that you can just keep dipping into whenever the need arises, and it's a great time saver too, doing things in big batches like that. In my blog post about processed meat substitutes, you'll also find other ideas like this with descriptions and photographs, so that you can try experimenting with replacing bacon and processed meats from the supermarket with your very own homemade and much tastier substitutes. If you have any comments or questions, please just write them in the comments box below, or contact me via www.zestforlifediet.com by clicking on the author tab and sending me an email. Thanks very much.